Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1354. The topic is mindset and the title is How to Manage Lack of Spousal Support for Your Goals. Now, we did a podcast a couple podcasts ago. It was actually podcast number 1350. It was a mindset podcast titled Managing Lack of Social Support for Your Goals. That one was very helpful, very fun conversation. We then had kind of a client and I were talking. So for my online clients, we do like a journal online that we converse back and forth with. So they'll send any messages, I'll send messages back or answers back. We also do like nutrition reviews, training reviews. If they send videos, I send them information there. So it's pretty much our kind of communication system. And I had a client write in about some issues they're struggling with their spouse, their significant other, in trying to reach their goals, but it might be negatively impacting their relationship. So I wanted to kind of expand on that past podcast, 1350, and kind of talk on spousal support today. So I want to read you a little bit about what they wrote, what I wrote back, and then we're going to expand on it. So they wrote, "Hey Rob, thank you for all the feedback and advice." This was previous stuff that we had talked about. "I'm feeling really good with the nutrition plan so far. Energy levels are good. Workouts have been solid. I like the balanced eating throughout the day." So that's all good stuff. "The hardest part for me right now is the social aspect. My girlfriend and I often do social activities at night that involve food, such as movies, going out with friends, sharing late night desserts, etc. We both love the food aspect of these activities, and it's created tension when I've tried to limit what I eat in those situations because I don't want to go over our calorie limit. Do you have any suggestions for how I can handle these situations better?" Okay. So definitely something we want to look at, something we want to try to figure out ways around. So I'll read you their answer, then we'll kind of expand on this. So I wrote back, "This is tough." But we can think of some things. "On nights you don't go out, use that as motivation to crush those days and be right on point with the target numbers." So knowing that you have some leeway or some moments later on where you might be a little off track, use that to make the best choices you have available when you can, so that way you don't feel as negative, or the deviations don't feel as negative guilt-wise, or even kind of negative progress-wise. So use that as motivation. That's me extra. I expanded on that. I didn't write all that. I just wrote on nights you go out, don't go out. Use that as motivation to be on point. Now, the next thing I wrote was, "On the nights you do go out, do what you have to do to get your protein right, and then shift some of your carbs and fats down from the daytime to allow for the evening to have more calories." So, for example, if your daytime meals have about 400 calories coming from carbs and fats, you can drop that down to 200 calories from carbs and fats while still hitting your protein target, and then that saves more carbs and fats for the evening. So this is something like they can definitely play around with. This is something I do all the time, and a lot of my more advanced athletes and all of my personal trainers who I work with when we do nutritional counseling to this degree, we all play with these kind of concepts at all times. So if you're new to it, it is something that is possible, is you can play with your carb and fat timing while still getting your protein timing correct, and that helps kind of give you more leeway. Also, I'm not sure what your schedule freedom is, but training on the day or the next day after going out really does help. So I try to implement that as often as you can. So since we know on training days, your activity is higher from actually training, but also the recovery process, it's helpful to train on the day, like in the daytime, on the nights that you would go out. So that way your body has more demand for calories at that time. So you might not get as much fat loss if you are eating extra calories, but you won't get as much fat gain, because since you do have the damage from the training, more of those excessive calories are going to go towards building new muscle tissue, repairing, joints, tendons, ligaments. It's going to get put more to work. So if you can train on the day of, that's super helpful. If you need to, you can train the next day. That does kind of help. It's not as helpful, but it does help a little bit, burn off a little bit of extra, like any kind of stores of glucose and like glycogen stores. You can burn those down so that way you have greater fat loss throughout the rest of that day. So there are things you can do with timing of training, but the best thing would be to train on the day you're going to go over, or worst case scenario, train the morning of the next day. Then I also wrote to him that adjusting expectations might be helpful. So if we do trend going high in calories on the days you go out, it will slow down fat loss to some degree. It won't negatively impact building muscle, so that's great. But we will be a little slower in fat loss. But if you're okay in making that trade, then that's totally okay. So I wrote actually about kind of my choice. So for example, I know what it takes to be like 6% body fat, like a bodybuilder on stage. I've helped people earn pro cards. So I know what that is. And I know that if I wanted to be that way, I could do so. But that's not the lifestyle that I want with my wife. So with my wife, I want to be free on our schedule to kind of adjust throughout the day when needed, adjust with what foods, so if we're out and about and I know I'm supposed to eat, we can stop at a gas station. I can pick up some cashews. I can, maybe they'll have a turkey and cheese wrap or something like that for like 470 calories and I can just snack on that. So I don't usually miss meals, but I will often change what I eat. Maybe the calories will be a little high or low at parts of the day. Maybe protein will be a little higher or low at parts of the day. But I like having some freedom. I've lived alone for quite a while in my life, and I've done all the super strict dieting and all those things. And I believe in my abilities to diet strictly when I want to. So I've done diets where I lost 50 pounds in 10 weeks or less 3 times. I've done diets where I force-fed myself to try to gain size to the point where I threw up outside of one of my college classes one time because I was trying to force-feed myself. So I've done all the things that I need to in order to kind of prove to myself that I can be tough when I want to. So right now, I would rather just enjoy the time with my wife. So I'm okay if I have a little bit higher body fat percentage than what I know how to sustain, just because I want that life balance. I'm growing my business and making changes to it all the time, building my relationship with my wife. We've only been married for about a year and a half now. So we've known each other for 3 years. And it's still kind of a fun, ever-evolving process, getting to know her and, love her more. So I want to have the emotional bandwidth to be able to vary my food and training some while building that relationship. And this has also helped through 2020, all of what 2020 was. There was a lot of changes in business. Her mother had a stroke, and that involved months on end of odds and ends that we had to deal with because we had to move her and stuff. So if I was trying to be, perfect with nutrition at that season of life, oh my gosh, that would have been crazy stress, and it probably would have put quite a bit of strain on our relationship. So it was good to have a little more freedom through those moments. And the reason why I pointed that out to the client is that I'm not going to judge them. So sometimes I still do find it surprising that clients will be surprised that I'm not super hardcore about things. I feel so bad when they tell me horror stories of past trainers and nutritionists and stuff they worked with, where if they had 1 gram of fat, extra in a meal, they got berated and told that they weren't disciplined and, they were never going to reach their goals if they're this mentally weak. And oh my gosh, I hope that trainer quits. 100% I hope they quit, because they're ridiculous and they're detrimental to the people they work with. So there's unfortunately a lot of those trainers who will judge the hell out of their clients, but yet they're probably full of shit and, cheating on things all the time, because no one's perfect. Literally no one is perfect. So whatever trainer, whatever bullshit they say, they're skipping on something. Whether that's sleep, whether that's hydration, whether that's, just kind of stretching between workouts, they're full of shit about something. They're not perfect. So they damn sure should not hold you to perfect standards. I am not perfect, not even close. I do a pretty damn good job of a lot of good things, but I'm not perfect by any means. I've made every mistake any of my clients will ever make. And then also I understand that for a lot of people, if they're not making money off of the way they look, they want to look good. Or maybe they want to get stronger. Maybe they want to improve their blood work for health purposes. But this is all something that we're balancing within the rest of our life. I do work with people where they make money based on the way they look. So it is a much, much higher priority in their life. I understand that. And for those people, those are the standards that we work to uphold. But for most of the people I work with, this is just a balance. We're just trying to balance this with everything else. So I am not ever going to like put somebody down for anything, because doesn't feel good to them. Doesn't feel good for me to do that to somebody. So I wanted him to know that I would not judge him if he were to want to be okay with a little bit of a slower pace of progress for fat loss. We're still going to gain a ton of muscle. We're still going to gain strength. So we're still going to make awesome, amazing, fast as heck progress in other areas. But for fat loss aspect, if his calories are, off to some degree due to the social aspects, then if we accept that, that's okay. So this is something that can be challenging because, for example, this client's girlfriend likely isn't saying, I don't want you to be physically fit. I don't want you to be healthy. I don't want you to be happy. She's not going to say that. But he is feeling some friction. And that can be most likely the case for most people. You might be just feeling some friction with your spouse if you're trying to work towards a goal and they don't necessarily embrace that 100%. So there's a quote that I like to kind of defer to is seek first to understand before being understood. Didn't bother to Google who said that. I'm sure somebody very smart said it. But that's a quote that I really like, is seek first to understand before being understood. So this is something I would give advice, and I have done this, thousands of times at this point, where if you're having issues, you feel friction with your spouse, be open in communication, but 100% listen first. Shut up. Don't talk. Give them some responses. Don't be a punk. But let them do the talking for a while. Bring up that you're feeling some friction and saying, hey, since I took on this goal, I know that it might have some impact on changes in our current life and how we normally do things. How are you feeling about that? Do you feel like any friction? Do you feel any kind of worries or concerns that maybe you want to talk about? And then talk to them. And don't try to defend yourself. Don't do that. Just listen. Listen. Okay? So you want to understand their point of view. Maybe they are afraid about losing time together. So, for example, this client's girlfriend, maybe she's just bummed because she's like, this is a great way that you and I get to bond, and I would hate to lose that. Well, that's actually, if we look at that, that's actually a pretty cool concern. Someone loves you so damn much that they don't want to lose a moment with you. That's pretty freaking awesome. How cool is that to have in life? That somebody loves you that much. So you want to recognize the love that's in that concern and approach that with the person you love in the sense of loving. You don't want to defend and argue and fight. That's ridiculous. This person loves you. They want more time with you. So honoring that and understanding that and giving them a chance to voice it in a very supportive way is super duper helpful. Also, they maybe have, is this goal going to take away from the help around the house? Maybe you have a pretty busy life and it depends on both of you helping out. And if all of a sudden your goal is I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week for an hour and a half each time, they reasonably might be thinking, holy shit, how am I going to pick up all the extra work? So that's something you want to let them voice and let them say that that's a concern of theirs. Maybe they're worried about extra cost. So maybe you're trying to take on, a big gym membership. Maybe you're spending a lot of money on supplements. Maybe food bill just doubled in the last month because of the change of your goal. So they might have some concern over money. Chances are that if you are together, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, wife, husband, whatever the combination might be nowadays. But whatever it is they love you. You both love each other. You're together for a reason. And that their concerns aren't going to be that they're more concerned about this thing than they are about loving you. They're just concerned about that thing. So communicate with them. Talk with them. Ask what their concerns are. And then something you can also do is after they've voiced their concerns, so give it some time, let that fully flush out, okay, is you can also kind of explain why you want the goal. Why is it valuable to you? Maybe they don't understand. Maybe they're not sure. Maybe they have an expectation or a belief that isn't the actual reason. So unfortunately, it has happened at times where I will coach a spouse, and maybe they're wanting to get in better shape, but their spouse, the one I'm not coaching, is not in good shape. So that person starts to fear, if my spouse gets in better shape, are they going to want to leave me? Are they going to see all these good-looking people at the gym? All of a sudden, they're not going to love me as much, because they're trying to change their aesthetics. Does that mean that they don't like my aesthetics anymore? That's tough. That's tough emotions to deal with. So flushing that out and talking to them about that is really important. So you might say is, you know what? I do want to look a little better for myself. Maybe I don't like the way I looked in a recent photo. Maybe we had family photos or a work event photo or something like that. And you just didn't like the way you look. Maybe you don't like the way you feel. Maybe you just want to do it because you're trying to become more disciplined in life and you thought this was a cool way to kind of work towards that goal. Just communicate with them why you believe it's valuable and how it's beneficial to your life. If it's also beneficial to their life in some way, you can explain that that's a concern, that's a contributable kind of reason to the decision. But if you talk about their concerns, let them voice all of their concerns, let that fully flush out. Okay, don't cut that one short. Let them really talk. And then you can kind of explain why you believe this goal is valuable to you. You can then express that you want to work together to address both their concerns, but still work towards the goal so you can have the valuable aspects of the goal that you believe. So that is something you can do. If they're worried about, taking time away from us, see if you can restructure the time or add more time or find different ways to do time. If they're worried about taking away from your time at the house, helping around the house, talk to them and say, hey, you know what? I understand that concern. So maybe in the morning I can start to do this, or in the weekends I can do that. Just let them know that you have a plan to still address your work. Okay? Then if it's about money, you guys can talk about that. Maybe there's something else that you can give up in order to make more money room for other things. So, for example, one of my best friends, we met in one of the early years when I opened the gym, and he drove by and he said, hey, dude, I only have $25 a month, but I would love to get a gym membership. I'm skipping a haircut so I could possibly get this. Now, the membership was more than $25 a month, but this dude just told me that he's giving up a haircut in order to make this work and how important it was for him. And I was like, oh, dang it, if it matters that much to him, I'll figure it out and we'll make it work. So we made it work. But it was cool to see that for his family, he was willing to let go of some things to then ask for this other thing. So he made a replacement of money, not actually just asking for more money, if that makes sense. And, there are partnerships. It's not like they had to ask for it. But in that sense of, whatever income that he earns, he provides to his family. So it's a joint effort, a joint responsibility of what's happening with the money, if that makes sense. So he wanted to make sure that he was doing his part to still support the family while also getting something that was kind of for himself. So that's something we can kind of play with. But that's the idea, is ask them what their concerns are. Explain why you believe this goal is valuable to you, and then talk to them and say that you want to work together to balancing the goals. Another thing you want to be aware of is during this kind of transitional time, it might be a good idea, a really damn good idea, to kind of invest a little extra into kind of love and communication. So there's the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And then there's a book called Love and Respect. I think his last name is like Ergitz or something. But if you just look it up on Amazon, it's Love and Respect. Great book. But those books are going to be great for you to understand. So males and females alike, Love and Respect is a great book for the sense that there's way more complexity to what I'm about to say. But in general, men, you want to communicate with male versus male, female versus female, or male, female. But if you're talking to a female, their concern is most commonly going to deal with some degree of, am I being loved in this communication? Am I being valued? That kind of thing. Whereas if you're speaking to a male, it's going to be more so directed towards, am I being shown respect? Now, this doesn't mean that men don't also want to feel loved and that women don't also want to feel respected. So if you have any kind of I don't know if I agree with that, read the book first and then come back and tell me if you don't agree. So it's a really good book, very good book. But I think it does help learn communication styles that are very, very helpful in order for, if you're talking to a male, for them to feel loved and respected, if you're talking to a female, for them to feel loved and respected. So I think it's a great book. Also, you can read that book, The 5 Love Languages, to understand how does my spouse best receive love. Not how you want to give love, it's how do they best receive love. So if your significant other, if their love languages are acts of service and words of affirmation, while you're in this transformation, it might be like transition, of making this new goal part of your normal life. Maybe you want to leave a couple more love notes around the house. Write a little note that says, I love you and I appreciate you, and put it in their underwear drawer. Just do some little extra things like the acts of service. Maybe you can get coffee for them in the morning. Maybe you can, cook dinner instead of having them cook dinner every night. Maybe you can do something that they normally do, a household chore. See if you can squeeze it in ahead of them this week. Try to do something extra that saves them a little bit of time. So while you're in the transition, it would be great to kind of invest a little more into that love aspect. And then having a better understanding of what they need from you with that communication might help calm some of their fear. So all of these are kind of, when you put them together in different ways, they can be very impactful and very helpful during that kind of transitional time. The other thing we want to look at is maybe your approach can be refined. Often when I talk to people and they tell me, like, I started this nutritional goal and I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, holy good Lord, that's way too much. Don't do that. As in, it's way too black and white. It's way too restrictive. It's too much when it asks for resources and stuff. So there are easier way to do things. And that's very helpful to learn. So there is a podcast that I would like you to listen to. It's one I've mentioned often, but it's podcast 1232. It's a nutrition podcast titled Start Here. So if you're going to do nutrition, learn what actually freaking matters, what actually makes the difference. Very rarely does what you eat matter more than how much you eat or when you eat. So it's more important to start with controlling calories regardless of what the calories are. It's more important to start controlling protein regardless from where the protein is coming from. And it's more important to have calories and protein coming in evenly throughout the day, or to match your activity throughout the day, than it is as to what the foods are that contribute to calories and proteins. Knowing this allows for so much freedom in your nutrition in regards to specific foods. And that can ease a huge burden, a huge stress when you're trying to blend your nutritional goals with other people's. You don't have to eat boiled chicken and Brussels sprouts and brown rice. You don't need to eat those foods. They're not very good, first of all, and they're not necessary. So a lot of food issues when it comes to blending one diet with regular people's lives is that people are way too restrictive on what they think they can eat. Way too restrictive when it doesn't actually have that much of a significant effect. So listen to podcast 1232. That's going to help a lot. Also, training-wise, you do not need to train, 6 to 7 days a week to look like a badass and to feel like a badass. I've trained people who got pro cards and they only train 4 times a week, an hour and 15-ish minutes per time. And that's pro cards. I help people who are elite powerlifters and they might only train 2 or 3 times a week. So you don't have to be in the gym all the time. You don't have to be in the gym for 3 hours. Good Lord, no. And the nutrition can be a lot easier than you think. So there's a lot of ways that you can achieve your goal when it comes to nutrition and training wise that are probably a lot more open and allow for more kind of variety within the realm of what's needed, so that way you can better blend those goals with your spouse's life and your typical normal life. So these are kind of the suggestions. Refine your approach. Recognize that there's 1,000,001 ways to skin a cat, as they say. So, don't make it overburdensome on your life and their life if it doesn't need to be. If you have any questions about your approach and knowing if it's good or not, just email me at brutalirongym@gmail.com and I'll give you some help. Then you want to be willing to Work with your partner, bring them into the process, talk about their concerns, and work together to address those concerns. That's going to help a lot. And then be willing to extend your timeline if you need. So if everything being super strict would allow you to reach your goal, say in 4 months, but in 4 months you're going to ruin your relationship, stretch it out to 6 months. Let it take a little bit longer. Keep the relationship. Make sure you keep a balance in your life. Okay? Well, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, if you need anything, our email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. You can always reach out. I appreciate you listening to the podcast. I want to make sure that you get what you need from it. Cool. Well, I wish you the best of luck. If you need anything, I'm always here. If you like today's podcast, please share it. The more people we share the podcast with, the more people we can help. Sharing it on social media does make the biggest effect. You can also just share it in a conversation with a friend. If you hear them having any issues or troubles, send them our way and I'll make them a podcast to answer their questions. Thank you to the patrons of the podcast, the people who financially support the podcast, which you can now do on our website. We have a donation link on our website, www.brutalirongym.com, where you can do a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation. I really appreciate it. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year for hosting costs and whatnot, and I give an hour to it every day. I truly appreciate the financial help. Absolutely the only way I can do this every single day and keep it for free. So thank you very, very much. Also, if you like the information we share on our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.